Hey folks, how's it going? Dr. Spin. Eclectic album reviews and general musical meanderings. So, Dusty Hill. This whole getting old thing is starting to kind of really take hold a little bit because Dusty Hill, bass player for ZZ Top, passed away a couple weeks ago. And a lot of my experience as a musician comes from the fact that I was kind of a high school young musician. And although I credit Geddy Lee as being a very big influence on me, he really kind of wasn't the first. The very first thing I ever learned on bass was the bass line for Owner of a Lonely Heart. And then after that, it was a big long string of ZZ Top songs I used to just jam during lunch with a friend of mine who's a drummer. And Dusty Hill was kind of the guy that made me realize like what the role of the bass is and how bass parts differ from guitar parts. And also, in general, ZZ Top kind of gave me an understanding of how the blues are set up and the way they function. So Dusty Hill actually had a very big influence on me at like an early stage of my bass playing game. Now, of course, full disclosure, as much as I consider myself kind of a ZZ Top fan, I'm in no way a completist. As a matter of fact, I kind of jumped on board ZZ Top when a lot of people my age jumped on board ZZ Top. And that was when they went on their kind of mission. ZZ Top in the 80s, like many bands from the 70s who'd been working extremely hard, reinvented themselves for the MTV generation. And they had hats and sunglasses. So they had this whole image that they created for themselves for the album Eliminator. Eliminator was also extremely well known for being an extremely electric album for them. Like it actually stepped on some of the blues fans' toes about how synthesized and how electronic that album. But that album was extremely influential. I mean, really poised them up there right with like Madonna and Michael Jackson, Van Halen, a whole slew of extremely well-seasoned rock and roll musicians, especially from the 70s, that reinvented themselves. So all that being said, it's kind of odd that I would try to honor Dusty Hill by talking about the album Afterburner, because like its predecessor, Afterburner is really the height of their mission period, their electronic music period. Whatever they did on Eliminator is just done more on Afterburner. And there's some rumors that abound that perhaps the way that they're credited in the credits of the album isn't exactly how it played out, because there's so much electronics. Like the drums are definitely electric drums, electronic drums, not just electric drums, but like drum machines. And very possibly the bass playing too was largely synthesized, meaning that most likely by the time we got here it was pretty much just drum machines and synthesizers and sequencers, and then guitarist Billy Gibbons playing guitar over the top of that. Now, I don't think that was meant to step on anybody's toes in the band. I think it was a group decision. And rumor has it that the guys in the band in general liked this album, even though it was a further step away from the roots of what they were about. And for me, as odd as it is to talk about this album in reference to Dusty Hill, where he might not even be playing much bass on this album, to be real about it. But for me, this is the ZZ Top album that's the most vivid. For a while, tapes were being made with this like clear plastic. I think they currently maybe still are. And there was something about the way that clear plastic smelled. That smell reminds me of the album Afterburner. There's something kind of important to me and very magical about this album because it really spoke to me at an important part of my life. And I think actually, that being said, despite my nostalgic feelings about the album, it's actually got a lot of really great songs on it and a lot of really great playing, especially from guitarist Billy Gibbons, you know. If he's the guy that's kind of heading up the group at this point and really kind of taking the lead on the organic components of this album, he carries it in a big way. His guitar playing is tasteful as always, great guitar sounds, but what I really enjoy about him is his sense of melody. He's one of those guys like David Gilmour, maybe even Eric Clapton to a degree, whose kind of blues-based melodic playing drives the song along. where the melodies of the guitar solos are as important to the song's overall construction as the lyrics are or anything else. So I think there's a lot of really great things about Afterburner. I know there's lots of people who would detract from it. But look, by this point, you're talking about a group that is knee deep in the 80s. It's an album that made the best of a very interesting set of cultural standards as far as music goes. How are you going to be a blues band and then live in a universe where the standards are things like, Art of Noise, that sort of sound, or the Herbie Hancock's Future Shock album, right? These are sort of the things that white people thought was hip hop in the 80s. And so ZZ Top really had to live up to those standards. And generally speaking, they did that. I mean, the first track from this album is a very clear statement of their intent with Afterburner. Now, as important as the switch was for ZZ Top into this more electronic phase that they were in on Afterburner, I think the thing that's really as important as the shift in their sound was the shift in their identity. And there's this interesting thing that went on with their videos too. As people who were embedded in the MTV generation, they really had to make their videos kind of do something, be part of it. So there's this sort of subtext in their videos, this kind of overarching plot that starts actually in some ways on Eliminator and even carries over into Afterburner. Whereas maybe on Eliminator, they were sort of like extra-dimensional beings. It comes to pass on Afterburner, there actually might be aliens, Even though on the surface, it seemed like there was a big change in the band. At the core of what they were still essentially like a little blues band from Texas. And I think that actually, if you look at Afterburner in this way, Afterburner is actually really super innovative. It's not electric blues in the sense like Stevie Ray Vaughan. It's not just like plugged-in blues, but it's electronic blues. And sure, it sounds a little square in comparison to what people's idea of the blues are, but there's a certain drive to automation, to drum machines that can be appealing, especially I think that if it's paired with a kind of an organic component. His guitar playing is very clearly the work of human hands playing, and I think the juxtaposition of electronics and the mechanical nature of the sounds on the album really creates for something that's kind of unique and distinctive, and actually I think pretty innovative in its own way. Even though from the perspective of blues tradition you could criticize Afterburner, I still think there's a lot of really great things about it, and I think it's actually really pretty innovative what they were doing with that. These albums really, unfortunately, could only have been made during the 80s, which means that they're not timeless. If you listen to Afterburner today, you'll hear it and go, this sounds like an 80s album. It's like, in some ways, some of the worst things about the 80s, but also some of the best things about them, some of the most distinctive things. And so it's an album that's the best album that could have been made at the time, but probably will never be looked at as something that will transcend the time. It's not like a unilateral cultural classic like some of their other works are, because it's so tied to the music sounds and the music culture from the 80s. Just enough of that slicky stuff to hold the seams on your fine blue jeans. Yeah. Say yeah. Never catch all you gotta do is let's do the Velcro flag. Do the Velcro flag. Afterburner, they kind of got lucky. They turned all the amps up to 11. They pushed the identity almost to the point of jumping the shark. And it worked, in my opinion. It worked on this album. And they made one album after this that was sort of along the same lines. It's still sort of mission that they were on, called Recycler. And if you listen to Recycler, you can just kind of tell the magic is gone. The gag had played out. And so there's this little small chunk of time between Eliminator and Afterburner, I think, were really make or break times for ZZ Top. And they made it. I mean, they became a huge cultural phenomenon. And even today, people will see ZZ Top and the two guys with the beard, right? So it's a pretty broad loss that Dusty Hill brings to the table whenever we learn of his passing. But he had an impact on me as a bass player and culturally. I mean, I had a ZZ Top keychain when I had my first car, and I had just my car key on it because, That there was only one key on the Eliminator, the keychain, and that was sought after for guys my age. ZZ Top was super cool with what they were doing, and still love it. Still love Afterburner today, even though it feels very dated. So if you're willing to look at it from the perspective of a kind of an innovative 80s album, Afterburner is a great one. I think to check out. And ZZ Top has had a long career since, but those two albums, I think, especially ending with Afterburner, there was something special going on with them. But that's all I have to say about Afterburner today, and Dusty Hill as well. So if you like the video, please like it, subscribe it, share it out to your friends. Also follow me over on Spotify. Of course, I'll put an Afterburner song up over on that 2021 playlist, ever-growing playlist. And I'll catch you guys next week. Till then, see you on the flip side.